Hi, this is Tom Tass from Ontario, Canada. Today's show will focus on borders, language, and culture. We hope you enjoy it. We'll see you soon. Don't forget to hit that like button and to subscribe to the BORDERPOL Journal as soon as possible. Take care.
Got it. There we go. Well, hello, and welcome to the first broadcast for the month of March.
Yes, season 3, episode 7. And it is the Borders Language Culture Edition.
Well, and not necessarily in that order, I guess, but yeah.
No, not necessarily in that order. Maybe not even any of those issues.
Well, I think probably right off the top here, the topic of migration, the government here in Canada has imposed visa requirements on Mexican nationals. I guess that part and parcel. The news reels said that back in 2016 there were 269 refugee claimants from Mexico, and as of last year, per year, and as of last month, it was up to 2,300 or something, some phenomenal number anyway.
Yeah. Now, to my knowledge, Mexico has not been a problem immigration-wise for Canada, has it?
I don't think so, but obviously there are people that are perhaps using fraudulent Mexican passports to make claims, or they're using fraudulent documents to assist their arrival here. I don't know what it is, but it's interesting, and it seems to have followed very, very closely with the province of Quebec's ultimatum to give us more money on refugee resettlement issues. And why did they pick on the one group when there's lots of other ones out there? I don't know.
Well, I suspect a phone call was made from down south to the gentleman called the Prime Minister of Canada from the President of the United States, who's got a lot of problems on his Mexican border.
Well, that's true, but I still don't see how imposing a visa requirement here would help solve that problem, because as I understand it, they're really not doing much to stem the flow of the illegals crossing the border anyway. So they don't know whether they're on Mexican passports or Guatemalan passports or Costa Rican passports, and I may be wrong on that. Be interesting to get a point of view, maybe from some of the Border Patrol people that would tune in. But
well, my best guess is that they're looking for ways to vindicate their actions on the southern border. Now, there are some folks who are saying that the northern border of the U.S. presents a serious threat from immigration from Canada of people who are simply wandering across the border. Now, there's basically two places you can do that with kind of impunity: throughout the prairies, because there's a good 2,000 miles of nothing between Canada and the U.S. Apart from the defoliation exercise that they do to demarcate the border, or right through the mountains. Well, people have been known to freeze to death on their way through Manitoba, North Dakota, or what have you, trying
to Saskatchewan, yeah.
And then, of course, in Vermont, that sector of the border has always been a hotbed of smuggling and illegal migration in both directions. Curiously, our American cousins seem to forget that for almost 3 years, Roxton Road was a port of entry created by traffickers, and Canada's national police help people carry their luggage across the border because they're all supposedly asylum seekers. But I digress. point being, I think the Mexican visa imposition is just collateral damage on the Mexicans for what's happening on the southern border. And I would not be surprised in the least if a phone call wasn't made, as I said sarcastically earlier, from the Biden administration to the Trudeau regime to be in line with the thinking of open borders, which we spoke about last week, which the open borders policy is just that. It's an open border. Now, I suspect that the killing of that young woman down in Georgia last week by an alleged illegal migrant from Venezuela. I think he was also removed a couple of times, but nevertheless, that has really got the folks wound up, and rightly so, in the U.S. And then, of course, there was dueling presidents on the border immediately thereafter. On Thursday, you had former President Trump up in the El Paso sector, which is quite busy these days with unwelcome migrants. And then the current president, Biden, was in Brownsville, Texas, where really not much goes on, but it's curiously the home of a number of NGOs that are helping to deal with the unwelcome migration. That's my new term. It's the unwelcome migration movement. No one's welcomed anybody here, but they're there.
Well, it's probably a little bit better than mine. Mine was the self-selected immigrant class, but that might be a bit harsh.
But we left off last week's video podcast with we're going to look for good news. Well, I'm afraid I haven't found any good news.
Well, the only thing I can add positive to that, nothing really to do with border issues, was we had a really, really wonderful time last night. We went out to a pub in North Vancouver, and there was about 20 people that we got together with, all of whom were with my wife's graduating class.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, we're getting older to start with. So getting 20 people our age together was, I think, remarkable in itself. But the fact that you had 20 people from a graduating class getting together and wanting to get together and just reminiscing, I think maybe there is some good out there somewhere. And, there was talks of politics and there was talks of this, but it was mostly getting caught up in, what's going on and who's who and what's happening. And yeah, it was very enjoyable on a very positive note.
And what was apart from the positivity of meeting up with folks from
eons ago?
What was the gist of the conversation on things in general?
Well, there was lots and lots. I mean, when people find out what you used to do in your former life, and they always have questions about, well, what about this, or how about that, or how come this is going on, or why isn't more being done about this? And so it was interesting from that point of view, and from other people who. One gentleman was he was very high up in I believe it was CN Rail, and just the logistics of transportation, and I kind of kept that to myself for a bit, because I thought, geez, transportation, that's when I worked on the border, the trains that came back and forth were not unknown to have one or two illegals stashed on board. So yeah, it was interesting from that point of view, and but I say just positive that you can get together and right up until the point where the power went out in the pub.
Really?
It was Oh, and even when the power went out, it was still enjoyable because you could sit and still chat with people, and there wasn't just that animosity, that need to be angry. It was just a bunch of people who were happy to be together and chatting.
Well, you know, maybe there's something to be said to disconnecting from the day-to-day headlines that are just, a fire hose of ugly news, and divisive stuff that you know, really is stressful, I guess. I had a conversation, you know, you talk about uh, disconnecting. I was having a conversation with my granddaughter the other day. She was over here for lunch, and she works in the service industry at a fast food place. I won't name it because we want to be advertising, but long and the short of it is, she was saying that she finds that there's a lot of rude people who are now much more prevalent, showing up at the counter, giving their orders to, and literally giving orders to her. And she's a pleasant kid. I mean, she says, I don't understand why people yell at me or swear because the price of the hamburger and the fries and the you know, the meal is more than what they want to pay. And they start using all sorts of expletive words to describe the organization that she happens to be working for, handing them their hamburger or their meal. She says, I don't understand this. You know, there's so much stress out there of people who, on the one hand, seem to think that if you're in the service industry, you're supposed to take this kind of beating, verbal beating from the customer because that's your job, which it's not.
No.
And her point was, and she's 21. Her point was that she's never seen so much anger in the consumers who come to her fast food place.
You know, it was pointed out again on our trip up to North Van last night. We were chatting about that very thing, and that particular incident in kind, and it was indicated that maybe we've forgotten how to be polite. And part of that was, I don't know, my pontification on it is we were in various stages of lockdown and isolation and whatever else you want to call it for a very long period of time. And if you do that, you have a tendency to forget social acceptable things, and does it take a while to get that back into play and into the people's psyche again?
Well,
2 years is a long time, I will admit, but you know.
Well, there's a great deal of division in society that is artificially created by the so-called leadership of our collective societies at the moment. And it's all about, you know, getting people angry with each other. We talked about this many times before, about how this is artificially created to keep certain parties or individuals in power, because, you know, like fish, they start to smell after a while, and in order to stay in business, they create problems, you know, and then they're going to fix them. I mean, our illustrious leadership in North America has been doing this now for a while. Let's break things and then we will fix it, because that's the, you know, the problem is. But you know, the media, which is continually trying to paper over these divisions that are created by these geniuses, no names mentioned, are you know, we're, of course people are stressed out and they're getting mad at each other for stuff they don't even understand.
Well, that's true, and I think too, looking at it from the border issues, there's a lot of anger by people of the lack of direction and the lack of leadership on, particularly on the southern U.S. border. And even to a certain extent here, people are upset with, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't, people are coming in? Why aren't you getting rid of them? Why aren't you doing this? Why aren't you doing that? And I guess that's where part of the anger fits in too. I think we've talked about it before. We've mentioned many times that people don't like the government, but people expect the government to do things for them. And you reach a point where, how does that work? The government can't, and as we're finding out here, in Canada in particular, we've got a federal government that's moving more and more and more into provincial jurisdiction with healthcare, education. We now have bills before the parliament where they're going to have hate laws where you can end up in jail for life for upsetting somebody because it's misconstrued as hate language.
Well, it could be something that you said or read or talked about 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Canada is becoming the laughing stock of the world on sort of the things that are going on that are dreamt up by this regime here. I mean, it goes from the absurd, the announcement the other day that Canada is going to send military people to Ukraine, or they're going to be gender fluid, what do you call it?
Mine reclamation.
Yeah, that's right. And that it was going to be gender inclusive. Like, what does that mean? Women could get blown up trying to, go through a clear minefield. I mean, this is stupid stuff. This is so stupid that it's not, I'm not even going to talk about it because it's just beyond the pale. But this is the same nonsense where you've got a government here that keeps talking about how the press needs to tell the truth. Then meanwhile, it continually shovels money into the press to make sure it's their truth that's being promoted. Here, there's a the CBC in Canada loses money, fires people, then they give bonuses to the upper echelons in the management, and now this particular bunch of geniuses at the top of the government has given them another $90 million. To what? To prop them up, because there's no other way to describe it. And then you have the ArriveCAN scam that we've talked about for almost a year and a half, which is a total and utter corrupt pile of poop.
Nonsense. Yeah.
Really, I mean, and this government should have long ago resigned or have been forced to resign under scandal after scandal after scandal. And you wonder why people are angry? Because they have no faith in this leadership.
Yeah.
Which may well be, it builds up, and the guy that goes looking for his hamburger, he's already pissed off. He may have just listened to the news before he pulled into the drive-through and listened to this nonsense, and he or she's wound up already.
Yeah, and it doesn't take much to just drop that over the edge. That's for sure. And I have hope. I have faith that we will work our way out of this
before we get blown to bits in a nuclear exchange. Just now, as we're talking, it came over the news here. Germany confirms leaked audio of its top generals discussing how to blow up the Crimean Bridge. In a huge development, an absolute smoking gun revelation, Germany has confirmed the authenticity of a leaked audio recording file published by the Russian media. The leak was published by Margarita Simeon, who described what she described as a Russian security official. It first appeared in the headline, alleged audio of German officers discussing Crimean Bridge attack leak, as it featured top-ranking German military officers in a private discussion of a potential German operation, read this, German operation to bomb the Crimean Bridge in Russia. As it was initially described, Russian media is now openly admitting the call was in fact intercepted by Russia, and Moscow is now saying this shows direct German involvement in the war. Which is right up there with clearly even the discussion of sending Canadian military to Ukraine to advise or to help with the Ukrainian military's fight with the Russians. Now, regardless of what you feel or where you lay your odds on this Russia-Ukraine conflict, it's news to me that we're at war with Russia. Ukraine is not a NATO country. What are Canadian troops doing there? If heaven forbid this bright idea actually comes to fruition, and we have a combat soldiers, Canadians, they're killed, the game is up, because essentially they've declared war on Russia. And I'd like to know, at what point did the Canadian Parliament give the authority to the Prime Minister and his gang to start sending military people into a war zone?
It's totally different putting boots on the ground as opposed to putting munitions into the ground. But
he's talking boots on the ground, to manage the equipment. Well, you can slice and dice this any way you like. It's boots on the ground, and you've taken sides, and there's been no declaration of war, none of this stuff. This is very dangerous. Again, stressful. You want to see more migration from that? Try me.
Well, absolutely, and not just there. Anybody that's close around any of the Balkan countries or Slavic countries, and I don't know how many people are on the move there now, but my gosh, it's going to increase tenfold.
Oh yeah, and stuff is starting to percolate to the top. Just to get back to what just was reported. So this comes in from Germany. What's being reported is a very serious matter. This is a Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who is in Rome at the moment. He says, well, this is very, very a very serious matter. I quote, and we're intensively looking at it. German military has also confirmed the leaked recording, but officials avoided weighing in on the actual content until they have their own internal investigation. But however, it doesn't really matter, because the German Defense Ministry spokeswoman confirmed to Agence France Presse that the ministry believes the conversation of the Air Force Division was intercepted. Well, no kidding. The Russians aren't running around with little AM transistor radios. I mean, they're a sophisticated bunch like we are. They can intercept messages. I'm sure they have their signals people who can do that. Anyway, the German military says we're unable to say for certain whether changes are made to the recording or transcribed version on social media, says the experts from their Spiegel magazine, but they believe the recording is authentic. So the Ministry of Defense in Germany says, well, it looks like the conversation within the Air Force was intercepted by the Russians, which means the Germans were very into finding out how they should blow up this bridge, which, by the way, is outside of Germany, the best of my knowledge. So, these people were planning an attack on Crimea, and the whole business is now well and truly underway there, with things sticking out, you might say, out of the ground that are pretty obvious. The other one, sorry.
No, I was just going to say a couple of that, but on a bit of a divergent tack is the news that came up that there was a potential peace plans that have been tanked as well, and
Yes, that is the Wall Street Journal report. That was, again, this is Saturday, and it's not curious, but it's the usual stuff that if you want bad news to come out, you basically put it out on a Friday, because no weekend's coming up and people
late in the afternoon,
so that the weekend news cycle kind of buries it. But yes, the Wall Street Journal has pointed out that the truth of the matter with Boris Johnson screwing up the peace plans in Russia, it wasn't a rumor, it was actual fact. They had an opportunity 18 months ago to stop this, and they basically decided they sabotaged it. So there you go. It's a mess, and it gets messier as time goes on. And
I guess if you take that into account, 18 months, how many lives would have been saved, and how many people might not have decided to pick up stakes and move somewhere, disrupt lives and families, and
well, and then you've got these silly politicians like Macron, the president of France, who doubles down on sending French troops to Ukraine. He's, I'm going to double down. Well, that's okay. You double down, see how far that gets you. That's big time trouble, So it's Gaza. They're over 30,000 casualties now, or in that meat grinder that's going on. So again, no good news there, and it just keeps going on and on and on. And it doesn't look like there's much chance that that's going to be resolved in any time soon.
Well, there's two pretty strong-willed individuals that are kind of button heads there, that's for sure. And I'm not sure what the ultimate goal or end game there is. But then on the other side of that too, you look at that particular strife has been going on for quite a number of decades now.
Yes.
And at one point we did have the semi-resolve between the North and the Irish Republic in Ireland, and it seems to be rearing its head again. So is it part of our DNA, part of our psyche, that we have to have strife somewhere to keep things going? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but it's clear that we have an unserious bunch running so many things here that it just boggles the mind. I mean, the latest one, if you talk about the issue in Israel and the Gaza Strip, it was announced the other day that Canada, issuing our famous coloring book passports lately, has decided that if you were born in the region of the Middle East prior to 1948, you can put your place of birth as Palestine. Well, there was no Palestine. There was no country known as Palestine. But we're going to adjust history here to assuage somebody, or conversely piss other people off. But this is manipulation of the worst kind. And once again, nobody does this, but we've got a passport now, which I'm not sure what it's going to be worth when you don't have, you can choose a gender or no gender to identify yourself on the passport. Some countries will not even accept the Canadian passport because it doesn't tell you what the standard ICAO rules are for bio page in a passport. Now they're going to start making up countries of naturalized Canadians. I mean, I don't know how many would be. You'd have to be in your 70s clearly to have this new country that you were born in, according to the Canadian government. So I mean, and then we spoke earlier about this business of Bill C-63, which they're promoting, and instead of the media coming out and saying, "Hey, listen, this is crazy stuff that you're doing here," they're actually cheering the dirty work that's being done by the politicians on this whole business of turning Canada into a surveillance state. I mean, this is not the country. This doesn't make. I'm a loss for words. I'm sorry. This is so just.
Well,
so,
it kind of makes you wonder, even in our business now, if if we choose to talk about migration issues and
who's going to come here? If we live
one, who's going to come here, but two is that if this bill becomes enacted, are we subject to these things because we happen to say something against the government about imposing visas, for whatever reason on a particular country or particular nationals? Could that be construed as hate? And some of the stuff that I've been reading, it's open to interpretation. So
totally, and it's loosey-goosey law. Okay, and even the name of it, the Online Harms Act. I mean, come on, this is to call it a Trojan horse full of weird legal nonsense is almost a soft attack on this thing. But they introduced this. Trudeau and his regime did it on Monday, and fortunately, there are constitutional groups that are coming out and saying, and as are we, no, we're not into this. Okay, this is not going to happen. Just so simply. And by the way, while we're on the ArriveCAN business, I thought I'd bring another nail in the coffin of that corrupt nonsense. only a day after the federal government announced it would help review, was going to review the program with indigenous contractors for various contracts. It turns out that one of the CEOs of this ArriveCAN business, who is an indigenous person by a quarter, I believe, 1/4 indigenous, but nevertheless, this guy, he is actually a employee of DND, okay, and got $7.9 million for this contract. Now, the big news is he's been suspended, okay, but he still works there.
Yeah. With or without pay, yeah.
I tell you, I mean,
but if I had a $7.9 million contract, that would be like winning the lotto. I'd retire.
And then to wrap it up, and I think, sorry, we couldn't make this a good news thing, but that the former Prime Minister Brian Mulroney died this week. He was 80 something years old. Yeah. It's condolences to the family, of course, because that's the proper thing to do.
Of a family member,
yeah. But again, they could not leave this well enough alone, and we've all have various opinions on the legitimacy, if you will, long term of the Mulroney government when it comes to corruption and so on, because he was up to his neck in it. And there's lots has been written about what he did while he was prime minister that was questionable. But the Globe and Mail had to apologize for the obituary that called PM Mulroney divisive. Really? I mean, come on. This is absurd, because the Globe and Mail called him one of the most divisive prime ministers in the country. But then they said, oh, well, it was an automated tweet and it didn't stand up to their own editorial standards. An automated tweet where they got AI running articles now for the Globe and Mail. It's just absurd. Anyway, it's really gotten people questioning. This is the same bunch that gets money from the government, by the way, to let us know what the real news is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow.
So it's not been a good week, Bob, for looking for good news.
We're going to have to be like Macron. We're going to have to double down, find some good news.
Double down.
We're going to have to double down to find some good news.
I don't know. Doubling down is a. I don't know if we can double down.
There's got to be somewhere out there. It's kind of like the guy that goes in and gets thrown into a room with manure in it, and he picks up the shovel in the corner and starts flinging it about, and somebody comes in and says, well, what are you doing? Well, under all this manure, there's got to be a pony somewhere. There's got to be good news out there.
Well, it's been a tough week. We kind of skirted around some of the things, but it does impact on the culture. It does impact on our borders, and it does impact on our civil language with one another, which is frankly not been that great as we discussed today. That we need to have a little dash of civility. And maybe we should start a movement where we take a day off collectively as a country or as a group of countries, and we just don't watch the news and we don't listen to these leaders that we have, and kind of take a diet of go on a diet. Stop.
Well, coupled with that though, Tom, is you remember when you first started traveling and going away, and one of the big draws was being able to go to a resort somewhere where they provided internet.
Yes.
So you connect. I wonder if we could take that one step further now, where you can go to these same resorts and there is no internet. How do you think that would last?
That I think we'd be called Neanderthals to suggest that was even possible.
It's true.
You can't have a place with no internet because your fridge won't work. You can't have a place with no internet because the reservation system won't work. You can't have a place with no internet because your car won't start. I mean, the internet of all things is everywhere. So
Oh, yeah.
you'd have to be
Filter it out.
in a desert on a rock somewhere in the middle of nowhere.
Well, I guess if we keep pushing the buttons and poking the bear, we're going to find out where that is pretty soon too, I guess. But
well, anyway, this week is like I said, we couldn't find good news, but we'll work on it. In the meantime, up here you can see where you can watch us. It's you sign up for Border Poll at our website and become a member of the group. You can watch us on Rumble and on YouTube. Read us and hear us on Substack, also Spotify and Apple. And let us know what you think. Hit the button that says you like us. There's no button there that says we don't like you.
I think that if they don't like us, that by extension.
We're working on having a guest in the next week or two who's going to talk about organized crime and how that's impacting on migration and human mobility. So we're working on it. And if you have any suggestions on topics, let us know. Oh, by the way, we saw the various forums that are taking place right now, which is something we used to do before. Remember, Bob, the so-called trade show forums and politics.
Yeah.
We saw those. There was one just recently in Prague, which was some of our old colleagues running it. And good luck to them on that.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So that's it for the second.
Third month, second day.
There you go. I'm looking at the corner monitor here and I can't make up my mind. Is that metric or imperial?
And it really doesn't matter.
No,
Ultimately, we'll turn off the internet soon.
that's right. All right. So we're done for the week. And good to see you, Bob.
Yeah. Have a good rest of the week and dig deep.
Yes, we'll start digging for some good news.
Have fun.
You too. See ya.